We give out plenty of cruise advice here on the channel, but what happens if the worst possible things could happen to you on a cruise ship? Here's what to do in certain scenarios that could ruin your cruise. Up next. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. I love sharing tips and advice on how to have an awesome cruise and avoid pitfalls, but these pitfalls are going to happen to somebody, and hopefully it will never happen to you. But what if some of the worst things that you can encounter that can really ruin your cruise happen to you? How do you respond to it? What to do? I hope by watching this video, you'll have the information you need to be able to handle them. One of the last things you want to have happen to you is to get sick on your dream cruise vacation. But unfortunately, people do get sick on vacation. Sometimes it's just merely a cold, it could be COVID, it could be norovirus, or it could be something in between. If you brought any over-the-counter medications with you, like Tylenol, Dayquil, ibuprofen, take those, see how it works for you. But if that's not giving you the relief you're really looking for, then the good news is there are medical centers on Royal Caribbean's cruise ships. These medical centers are staffed with 2 or 3 licensed physicians and 3 to 5 licensed nurses 24 hours a day. If it's something more minor, like a sore throat, a headache, a fever, body ache, upset stomach, then you can certainly make an appointment down there by simply calling down and making an appointment. But if it's an emergency, obviously, you can go in 24 hours a day, and they do take walk-ins as a first come, first serve basis. Now, the staff on there can do a variety of things. They can prescribe medicine, they can treat anything you're doing, and they can also give you a good prognosis and help you be on your way. In the case of things like COVID-19, they can provide a COVID-19 test along with flu tests, strep tests, or other suspected illnesses, and try to evaluate yourself. Now, if it's something they can manage for you on board the ship with, again, prescription over-the-counter medication, they can do that, send you on your way to be able to recover back in your cabin. But of course, if it's something major, like you're having a heart attack or something truly bad, they'll triage the situation until they can get you onto land to a hospital to be able to do it. Depending on where you are and a variety of other factors, that may mean the ship bringing you to a port closer by. It could be a medical evacuation. There's a variety of things involved. Now, no matter what you do in the medical center, nothing is covered by insurance. So you're gonna have to pay cash for all of this, which is why it's really important to get travel insurance. Travel insurance covers a variety of scenarios, including going to the ship's medical center. And by getting travel insurance, although unlikely you'll ever need to use it, it would cover those scenarios for you and be able to repay you after the cruise for those things. Lose a SeaPass card in port. This has actually happened to me, and you might think you'd be in big trouble because when you try to get back to the cruise ship, they're going to ask to see your SeaPass card probably 3 times. Once when you enter the port area, once when you get near the ship, and then once when you actually board the ship. Now, if you lose your SeaPass card, don't worry. This is probably the tamest of all the problems to deal with. All you need to tell them is exactly what happened, that you lost your SeaPass card. Now, it's very imperative that you have identification. This is why when you go off into port, it's a really good idea to bring ID with you. And yes, I do bring my passport with me into port because for a lot of reasons, but this is one of them anyway. Have your identification with you so that way you can easily point and prove that you are actually a cruise ship passenger. They can locate up in the system, and you'll be allowed to board the ship, but the first stop you're gonna need to make once you get on board the ship is gonna be guest services to get a new SeaPass card. What happens if you lose your passport? So ideally, this will happen if you're gonna lose it or you forget it, it's gonna be at home. Because if you're at home and you lose and forget it, you can't cruise unless you are a US citizen cruising on a closed loop sailing, meaning if you're a resident of the United States and your cruise begins and ends in the same port in the US, you could still go on the cruise with birth certificate and state issued ID. That is an option available to you. If you're an American, you're going on a cruise out of Europe or Australia, you're out of luck. And if you don't live in the United States, well, none of this applies to you as well. If you lose your passport, misplace it, whatever the case may be before your cruise, there are ways to get an expedited passport renewal. In fact, there are a number of ways to do this that's going to cost you some money, but I like problems that can be solved with money as opposed to problems that really ruin everything for you. Anyway, you can make an emergency appointment at a passport agency or center for a urgent travel service. This is really for cruises or travel really within 14 calendar days of when you need to leave, but this is one option for you. The State Department operates about 24 passport agencies around the United States. If you don't live in a city with a passport agency, you're going to need to travel to one of these locations to submit your urgent travel passport application request. In addition, there are also third-party services. If you Google Get Passport Fast or something like this, you're probably going to find different companies that will obviously charge you for their services, but they can also make it go very, very quickly. Now, if you can travel with a birth certificate, my advice is do that in the interim. When you get back, then get your passport fixed, renewed, replaced, whatever the case may be. What if you're late coming back to the cruise ship? Certainly one of the worst case scenarios that always plays out in my head that maybe I'm going to be this person is, going on a shore excursion, probably on your own, and basically being late to get back to the ship. Now, if you booked your excursion through Royal Caribbean, good news. Because of that, one of the advantages of doing a Royal Caribbean excursion is that the excursion company will coordinate with the ship and be able to stay in communication and, of course, alert them that their tour is running late. And yes, the ship will either wait for you, or if it was truly like for some reason, you just can't get back to the ship for many hours, Royal Caribbean will make sure that you can rejoin the ship at another port. But what if you're late coming back to the ship on your own? You booked your own tour, you went out on your own, took a taxi, and you got stuck somewhere. So there's a couple things you want to do. Number one, you want to call Royal Caribbean. This is when you want to activate your cell phone or get a local phone somewhere and call them. On the back of your SeaPass card, at the very bottom, there's usually a phone number there. It says, in case of emergency, call, and it's 1-305-982-2700. This is only for like emergencies like this, not like, hey, how do I print my luggage tags? But anyway, this is what you would want to do to let them know that you're not on the ship and you're going to be late coming back. If you call and you're going to be a little bit late, the ship might actually wait. Another thing you could do is if you know someone on board the ship, call them, and then they will get down to guest services and let them know about the situation. Now, again, this is very much your mileage may vary. They may simply say, sorry, all aboard time is this, and we're leaving. So that's a possibility. In that scenario, if you were truly left behind and you're not going to be back well in time, ship's going to leave. In this situation, you are truly on your own to get home. Now, I would reach out to Royal Caribbean, again, with that phone number I talked about earlier on the back of your SeaPass card to make arrangements. This is also why I always bring my passport with me when I go into port in a foreign country, because you never know. If you have a passport and a credit card, you could simply go to the airport, book a flight for that day, and hop out and go right back home, right? If you don't have a passport with you, then you're going to need to go to a U.S. embassy. You're going to go to the nearest one. And by the way, the nearest U.S. embassy might not be close by. If you're bored one day, go check out where the nearest embassy is on Google Maps from Cozumel. It's not exactly a hop and a skip and a jump away. It's pretty far. Anyway, this is why you'd want to bring your own passport. The thing to do to avoid this scenario is always plan to be back much earlier than you need to be. If all aboard time is 4:30, I would plan to be back on board the ship at 2:30 just to give yourself extra time. You never know about traffic or delays or maybe even an accident that could get in your way. So give yourself plenty of time. Don't wait till the last minute. I mentioned earlier, losing your SeaPass card is probably the most common thing that could possibly happen on this list. This next one is probably the next most common one, and that is not putting your phone into airplane mode. One of the most expensive mistakes you can make on a Royal Caribbean cruise is forgetting to put your phone into airplane mode. Leaving your phone's data on can lead to expensive international roaming charges, and no one wants to be surprised with a huge bill. If you do this, you might come home to hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in roaming fees. Cell service on cruise ships is not covered even if you have a phone plan with international coverage. Therefore, regardless of your phone provider or where in the world you're cruising, always make sure to put your phone on airplane mode when your ship is sailing. Now, if you forgot or got turned on for whatever reason, you forgot to turn it off. Anyway, if you get the giant bill, the first thing I would do is call the cell phone company and plead your case. Be apologetic and ask if there's anything they can do. Usually, if you plead your case well and you explain that you made an honest mistake and you've been a customer for a long time, blah, 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 they'll probably knock it down some. It's unlikely they'll get rid of it completely, but don't pay the full bill necessarily. Call them up and do your best to try to get around that. But obviously, if you can't avoid it in the first place, definitely put your phone into airplane mode before it ever happens to you. Another worst case mistake that could happen to you is booking your flight too early on the last day of your cruise. Just like getting to your cruise port is really important, you want to get there a day ahead of time, you'll want to plan wiggle room for any delays you might encounter getting off the cruise ship. Now, most ships return to the port around 6 a.m. or so, but that doesn't mean you're able to disembark the ship at 6. Disembarkation usually starts around 7 a.m., with most guests off the ship by 9:30. Disembarkation, travel time to the airport, checking bags, going through security, this can all take hours, especially if the port is far from the airport. So I don't recommend booking a flight before noon, although it's important to research travel times from your cruise port to the airport. Some airports, like Fort Lauderdale, are located just a few minutes from the cruise terminal, whereas others require far more travel time. But if you booked a flight that's too close to when you're going to get off the ship, like, 9 a.m., which actually I get questions about all the time, can I make a 9 a.m. flight? The answer is no, you don't want to do that. So what you want to do instead is obviously number one, move your flight to a different time. By far, it's more advantageous and smarter to do this in advance and change your flight time to later in the day. If you can't get a flight until later, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the idea of sitting in the airport makes you nauseous for the entire day, well then what you could do also is to get a day pass to a hotel. There are a number of websites like dayuse.com that you can get hotel rooms to use for the day in the vicinity of the airport and be able to spend your time there. So you're not sitting in the airport, but in a hotel room where you can take a nap, order food, relax, whatever the case may be. If there's not another flight till the next day, then the answer is pretty obvious to me. Go on the next day. What you don't want to do is risk trying to make that flight, because if you don't make it, never mind the anxiety and the stress that's going to come with trying to make that happen. But if you don't make it, now you're at the mercy of what available seats are available at the very, very, very last minute. So don't be that guy. Change your flight times now. Sunburn is something else that happens to a lot of people on cruise ships and can really ruin a couple of days of your sailing. Now, if you happen to get sunburned because you forgot to apply sunscreen, well, there's a couple things you want to do. Number one, you want to apply moisturizer to soothe the skin. Aloe vera is a very popular option. You can usually buy it on board the ship. But you also want to seek a cream that contains hydrocortisone to help, again, moisturize the skin and make the pain a lot more tolerable. Number two, taking Tylenol or some other over-the-counter medication can help with the pain a little bit. If the pain is really bad, like severe sunburn, don't take that lightly. What you want to do is seek medical attention. Cruise ships have medical facilities that can evaluate the severity of your burn. And if it's really something that's out of the ordinary or something where you're really just not loving life, then it is worth going down the ship's medical facility to figure out exactly the best treatment options for you. Now, obviously, what you want to do is avoid getting sunburned in the first place, apply sunscreen, wear clothing that blocks UV rays. These are all easy ways to prevent it, but obviously reapply sunscreen as well throughout the day. Just because you put it on at 9 a.m. doesn't mean it's still working for you at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Apply liberally often, I would say about every hour or two, just to be safe. So there you have a look at some of the worst case things that could possibly happen to you on a cruise. There are obviously more than that. I'm not here to be as imaginative as possible, but these are the things that could possibly happen to you. Unlikely, but if they did, now you know what to do. Let me know in the comments below how you've handled these situations if they've ever happened to you, and what you do to prevent any of those situations from ever happening in the first place. While you're down below our video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. That way, YouTube lets you know we have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.